So this will be the last video tutorial on the infill or skinny home project. We're going to take care of a bunch of odds and ends here, so I'm not going to kind of go specifically into details because we have to cross off quite a few things here. Okay, so the very first thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we added a garage. In order to do that, we're going to actually have to create new levels because we don't want our garage pad to be at the same level as the main floor. In fact, when you're actually creating or building a multi-level home, your main floor is always elevated roughly about 2 feet above the earth, or topo surface in this case. The reason why it's done that is just in case there is a flash flood. Most of the flooding will be contained to the basement and should not affect the main floor. That is why the main floor is always offset higher. Okay, so to get started, we're going to actually have to create an additional couple of levels here. So in my project browser, I plan to scroll down, and on the elevation part, I can double click on any one of these, and then I'm back to where I actually created my levels. Now from the architecture ribbon, what I want to do is go ahead and create 2 new levels in this case. So instead of going and dragging from left to right, I'm going to actually go ahead and go from right to left. So here's this level, which will eventually be the garage pad. And I'm not too concerned about where you place these in relation to the other existing levels, because we're going to rename everything and we're going to change the elevations. And I'll just put this one right about here. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and rename this level here by hitting escape a couple times to exit out. And I'm going to call this one 06 in all capital letters, garage pad. And of course, we always want to rename the corresponding. As far as the elevation goes, we're going to actually set this at a negative elevation of -2 feet. Now, the last level that we're going to put in here is actually going to be the garage roof. So this will be 07 garage roof. And the elevation is going to be 8 feet. Okay, great. So we're now ready to get started on creating the actual garage itself. So starting from the garage pad level, I'm going to double click. Now, since this is an infill or skinny home, the garage has to be directly behind the house because remember, your lot is skinny and you can't stick your garage over here because your lot's just not going to accommodate it. So with that, I'm going to go to the architecture ribbon, and under walls, I have to specify the height, and I definitely want to go higher than the main floor. In fact, I want to go to the garage roof in this particular case. I want to confirm also I have a generic 6-inch wall. So right in the back, I plan to do a garage that is roughly 20 feet by 20 feet. And that's kind of the minimum size that you'd want to create for a double garage. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's hit the doghouse and confirm that our walls did go to the appropriate level. And there you can see that if this is my main floor right over here, it's actually offset higher than the garage pad. And then our topo surface is going to be at this elevation right over here. Now, in theory, I could have actually put my main floor at 2 feet, my second floor at 12 feet, and so on and so forth. But just to simplify things, I just put it at 0, 10, 20, and etc. The reason being is because everything's relative in this environment. Okay, so I'm going to go back into my garage pad, and I'm going to quickly just put in a floor here. Now, when I do put in an entrance to the garage, I'd probably put it on this side. And if I'm going to put my garage doors, the double ones, I'm going to put it on this side, assuming that my alley is going to be somewhere over here. Again, you have lot constraints that you have to adhere to in this case. Okay, so we're almost done that portion, and you're going to go ahead and put a roof on here. Again, if it's an infill or modern home, forego the hip or gable, which are really traditional. Try the different roofs that you learned in the previous lesson, which could include a flat top, a single slope, a butterfly, or maybe even a combination of those 3. Okay, so I'm going to go into my basement now, and what I want to do is I want to put in some basement windows here. The problem if I put a basement window though, let me just grab one here. That's relatively small, 24 by 24, and I'll put that right there. And then I'm going to hit my doghouse like that. Okay, so there's my window. And I know that my topple surface is going to roughly cut over here at this level. So there needs to be the need to actually take the window and move it upwards. I can do that just by using the arrow keys on my keyboard. The problem being though is my topple surface is still going to kind of cover a certain portion, but so if I move this up even higher, then I'm actually cutting into the wall, and that's not going to be really good. So my topple surface will be roughly down below here, and then this window cuts into the floor, so that's not going to work. So we're going to use a bit of a different alternative. We're going to actually visit Revit City, and in the key search words, type in basement window. What we're looking for is a basement window with a window well and drain pipe. Okay, so there it is. Let's click to open this up. And like always, we want to upgrade the model. So this is a 2009 version going up to a 2021 version, so that's quite the substantial jump. Okay, so this is the exterior window. What we plan to do here is go ahead and load this in the project. All right, and so I plan to place this on the outside wall, say right about here, and maybe right over here. Now, the rule of thumb is if you have a bedroom downstairs, you have to have a window in which somebody can actually escape. So with that, always make sure that you locate your bedroom. We're going to assume we have a bedroom right over here, and this window is going to exist as an escape hatch. And that is also required by law or code. All right, so let's go ahead and hit the doghouse. Now, this window might be a little bit low for now. I'm not too concerned about that because we can always move it up afterwards. Also, just ignore the drain pipe. This is actually referred to as a drain pipe that leads to weeping tile. So if there is a flash flood, everything gets funneled down into this pipe and then gets tied in to a drainage system. And that drainage system eventually funnels into a sump pump, which then pumps the water out curbside. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So let's add some topple surface like we did in the clubhouse. So I'll just double click on there. Now, if you have a roof with an overhang, it's really important that in this view, you actually hide it. I've got a flat top with no overhang, so there's no need for me to temporarily hide the roof in this case. But like I said, if you got something with an overhang, you'll have to do this because if you then put in your topple surface and then you're going to see the problems that arise with it, we have to do an extra step by putting in a building pad. I'll get to that in just a bit here. Okay, so from the site level, we're going to go to massing and site. And I'm going to go to topple surface. Okay, so from here, I'm going to specify, if you recall, an elevation of -2 feet. Again, that's the same height as the garage pad. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a bit, click my points, and then we're going to hit the check mark here. All right, so definitely my window wells are a little bit, I guess, recessed. So I'm going to zoom in here and just kind of click the edge of it here. And then again, like we said, we're just going to go ahead and just move it upwards ever so slightly. Don't do it too much because we don't want it to cut into the actual floor above it. But that should suffice. Now for now, I'm just going to delete these two window wells over here because when I do the building pad, it's going to go a little quicker for me. Okay, so we're almost at the point where we can actually, get comfortable with the topple surface and the levels here. But if I do click on one of the walls and hide it, actually I'll hide the entire category of walls, you're going to notice that my topple surface cuts into the basement. And you'll also notice that I have a dithering pattern over the garage pad. So what a building pad does is actually wraps around those surfaces and prevents that, topple surface from cutting in there. So we have to attend to that in just a moment. Okay, before I do that though, quick review on materials on the site level. Materials on the site level is always different than painting materials on walls and exterior surfaces and so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the edge of my topple surface. And if you recall, as a quick review, if I go to by category and then click the small little button here, my materials editor comes up. If you don't have the split pane, just go ahead and click on this, and then that will show up. Upon a quick search of grass, you can see here it is. And there it is. And of course, it's not going to show up until I go into realistic, and then you'll actually see the pattern. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and reset our walls. Okay, so obviously the next thing I have to deal with is the building pad. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the site level, I'm just going to double click. We're going to do our first building pad, and we're going to do it on the garage, and you'll see the difference. So building pad, I'll just take the rectangle tool because this is going to be the simplest in this particular case. And then from the middle of the walls, I find it works best to have the building pad. I'm just going to click like that, and let's hit the check mark. So upon reviewing and having a quick look, you'll notice now that the building pad wraps around and I don't get that weird effect in there in the garage. And then you can see, looking below the topo surface, how everything kind of wraps around. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here too for this part, but we're going to have to spend a little bit more time drawing our lines for the building pad. Okay, so as far as the building pad goes, click on that again. I'm going to definitely use a line tool in this particular case. And just kind of going in the middle here. Just got to get snapped in the right place. Close enough. And what I'm going to be doing here, and I can move this line afterwards, I'm going to have to put an arc in this place. But let me just go ahead and move this over just a tad. Same thing, I'll move this up. Well, that's too much. Okay, let's continue drawing here. Now, if you do the building pad inside the walls, you're going to see that you get a really weird effect in the basement. So you're going to have to definitely adjust these as you go. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to probably have to adjust all these lines individually. So let's come up over there. All right, and let's start adjusting some lines here. That's close enough. Same with this one. And the nice thing is these two lines are constrained to each other. That one seems to jump around a bit. We'll try fixing it afterwards. Okay, so let's use our arc tool. So I'm going to click, click, bend, and click a third time here to drop it. Same thing. Click, click, bend it, and drop it. So let's hit the check mark. And it's telling me that I don't quite have a finished loop, and that's easy enough to continue with. So let's just stretch this out with the modify tool. There we go, that fixes it. Okay, so upon further inspection, you can see that my topo surface is cutting very, very nicely wrapping around very, very nicely around everything. And of course, I can confirm that by clicking on a wall and doing a quick temporary hide. And there you go. What you don't want is if your building pad is not drawn correctly, is you actually might have a gap between, say, the building pad and the foundation of the home. So you'd have to go back and you might have to delete your building pad and redraw that. Okay, so far so good. And you can, of course, use subregion here to add a sidewalk to the front, a sidewalk between the house and the garage, and maybe even like a little bit of a driveway pad here too. I'm not going to go over that because, again, that was kind of a previous video that we ended up doing and all that stuff. Okay, so from here, what we're going to do is we are going to add some stairs because we need to go from the building pad level up to the front door. And if we have a back door, we have to do the same thing. We actually have to have a set of stairs going down. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's start from the garage pad and going into the architecture ribbon. I want to go with stairs. You're going to have to use a straight run. Before we start clicking and dragging our stairs, confirm though that your base level is the garage pad and that the top level is the main. What you don't want is the stairs going up to the second floor. That's going to be a bit of a problem. So I'm just going to just kind of sketch it out over here, and I'm just going to click and drag. Okay, great. Now what I can do is I can move this right into place. I can also outstretch this and move it like that. So let's go ahead, hit the check mark, and see how it all comes together. Okay, great. Don't need a railing on this side. And of course, I'm trying to stick with a theme, and that theme is going to be modern. So I'm going to go with a horizontal guardrail. Just a side note too, when you're actually doing the door and the windows, look in the Revit libraries for something that's quite modern or contemporary. You don't want something with what's referred to as mullions or grids inside the window. That's very, very traditional. That's not the look that we're going for here. All right, let's do the next staircase at the back of the house, just for a quick review. So architecture ribbon, stairs. We want a straight run. And of course, we're going to confirm that our top level is main. So I'm just going to click and drag the opposite way. I'll probably have to rotate this if I'm not mistaken, but nonetheless, what I can do is I can kind of drag this like that, make it a little bit wider, and hit the check mark. Oh, it did actually flip for me automatically. Bonus. That makes my life a bit easier. And I'll do the same thing over here with the railings here. And we definitely want to have railings on both sides just to make it safer. On the front, you don't need them on both sides because you kind of have the wall to support you if you need that. Okay, perfect. That takes care of that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to actually look at ceilings. Now, the issue that I have with Revit architecture is if you actually have ceilings and you also have stairs with the floor cut out, you're going to have kind of a gap between the ceiling and the floor above. But not only that, but you can also have a gap that you can see between that. So let me illustrate in this case. So if I go into the main floor here, and I decided to create a ceiling and do a sketch of the ceiling, I'm not going to do the entire thing properly, but just so you can kind of see what's going on here, because I'm going to get rid of the ceiling eventually. Okay, so now I'm going to hide all my walls. Okay, so you can see right over there, I actually have to do a cutout on my ceiling just like I would the floor. Okay, so let's click on this, edit the boundary, and then let's go back to the main floor. And then what I have to do is then to sort of draw that in just like a floor or a roof for that matter. Not quite done yet. I'll have to delete this line and replace it with 2 line segments. Okay, so that's looking better. Here's the problem though. You're heading up the stairs, and what do you see? You see this gap right over here. And the gap is not exactly the best thing to look at, especially when you're rendering. So, I mean, there is a way of plugging it. I'm not going to get into it because it is a bit complicated in that case. So we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to actually forego the ceilings for this project, and we're going to make our life a little bit easier when it comes to interior rendering. So no ceilings, no specifying ceiling types. Instead, what we're going to do to get our lighting scheme appropriately is going to add something called studio lights to enhance our renders. Now, a studio light is like a regular light fixture, but it doesn't actually have the fixture itself. So studio light is actually a light emitter. And so when I actually put in studio lights, they'll render and lighten things up for you, but you won't actually see a physical fixture with it. And so you'll find it under lighting, architectural, internal, and there's our studio lights. And you can see it's just a light emitter or orb. So when I start putting these in here, I get warnings that they're actually not visible. I'm going to ignore that. Hitting my doghouse here. Just trying to see where they're actually placed. They're there. So they will render and they will actually give off lights. Quick review for render settings. And again, I taught this before. This is just a really quick review. You should always be on the level that you want to render. And on the View tab, when you're doing interior renders or exterior for that matter, you're going to have to pull out the camera and outstretch it past the walls. Okay, so there you can see the studio lights. Personally, I always like to see things in realistic right before I'm about to render. Doesn't make much of a difference because you can see that I have all the default gray. But upon going back into the View tab and looking at the render settings here, I don't want to render the cloud yet because for interior renders, I have to make sure I select a different level or quality. Under the lighting scheme, I want interior sun and artificial. And now I'm actually ready to render in the cloud itself. So I'm going to skip that part. And like I said, that was just a really quick review. Exterior is even easier than that. You don't need to worry about settings. You can just click and drag your camera and just leave it on the default settings. In fact, I actually like to do exterior renders first and then change the settings for interior. That way I'm not going back and forth as much. Okay, so we've covered a whole bunch of different things such as new levels for the garage, toposurface, subregions, the garage floor, building paths. We've also looked at problems with ceilings and adding studio lights to sort of overcome that problem. So now what we're going to do is look at actually a sheet or for the presentation drawings. Now in the clubhouse when we actually created it, we actually had a small sheet which is 8.5 by 11. Now of course we've got lots of levels. So if we have lots of levels, we're going to have to actually get more real estate and a larger sheet. So I'm going to click on right click and go sheets. I want to load going up a level here. I'm looking for title block just like I did before. Now in this case, we're going to go with a 22" by 34 horizontal. This makes for nice plotting. Most plotters out there were actually 22 by 34. So this is a really good size for that. And let's click on OK. Okay, so like always, make sure that you put the your name, the title, the date, and of course the scale is automatically added for you. So when it comes to views, make sure you hide ceiling plans because we don't want to drag that in there, but we want to drag in our basement, our main, and our second floor. Now, I don't really need the garage here, so I'm going to crop that out because again, this is a presentation drawing mostly for the clients. And you'll also notice I have various different level bubbles too, because with the different levels, we need to actually have them to the corresponding floor plan. Okay, so let's actually start with the basement and we're going to really crop this like crazy. So again, this is kind of a review from the last project, but I'm going to go right beside the glasses and there is my show crop region. And so from here, I'm going to click on the crop region, grab the grips, and collapse it right over here. Nice thing about this project is this house is an infill. I probably don't have to scale on my sheet. And 1/8 of an inch is equal to a foot. Should be actually sufficient enough. You might even scale it bigger. I'll leave that up to you in any event. All right, so that takes care of that. Let's go back into the sheet. And then you can see that's a lot smaller. So I can place this on here. Whoops, got the wrong view. Let's just move this right out of the picture. There we go. That'll be easier to move around. Okay, I'm going to deselect everything so I can grab this bubble. And what I want to do is I want to place it right under the view. And to shrink this line, then I actually have to click on the view. And then I can just collapse this right like that. Okay, that's the first one. Let's do the second one, which is going to be our main floor. Again, show the crop region. This one's got a very large crop region. I'm going to crop out the garage because like I said, it's going to show up in the renders. Don't really need it here for the presentation drawings. Great. Let's jump back to the sheet. And there it is, outstretched all the way over there. right, deselect, grab the level bubble, match it up, click on the view, and then shrink the bubble. I'll let you do the last one. Again, you don't need the garage, but I'm going to leave that there. Now, we still have quite a bit of real estate that we can utilize here, and it's always nice to actually show the various views right over here, the east, the north, the south, and the west. I'm just going to drag the east in here, and you can do the rest of them on your own. But you'll notice that as soon as I go here, I'm going to have the same problem as before. And that problem is that I have lots of things included in here that I don't need. So for example, if I really zoom in, I can see the hatching pattern for the Earth. I don't really need to see that much. And it's also really, really wide too here. Okay, so let's actually jump to the east view. Same thing as before, showing the crop region, and I really collapse this inwards. Don't need the garage. And I don't need to see a whole lot of that Earth. Okay, so that should do it. I also don't need to see these level bubbles either. Now, if you temporarily hide it, by the time you save this and open this up, it'll be reset so you can see all the components and all the different fixtures or walls. So there's a more permanent way of hiding things. And so I'm just going to click on one of these here, and then I'm going to do a right click, and we're going to actually hide in view, and we're going to hide the entire category in this particular case. All right, that looks way, way better. So let's look into the sheet, and there it is. Like anything else, deselect. Let's move this so it's corresponding and make room for the other views. And by clicking on this view, I can then shrink the bubble, and then I can sort of make everything fit on here. What I also like to do with the elevations is I actually like to show them in realistic view. Nice to sort of see what the color looks like. And please, when you're doing yours, get rid of the default gray. It looks drab, it looks like it hasn't been finished. Same with your interior walls too. Okay, now, once you've finished off the title block in all capital letters, and you've added the basement, main, and second floor, and possibly a rooftop level, you're gonna definitely wanna crop everything. Also go ahead and make sure that you also add black hatching to all the levels too, because it's a presentation drawing. If this is a working drawing for a construction crew or a contractor, these walls will not be actually hatched solid, and you'll have a bazillion measurements so the contractor can actually build it. So that's really important. As a quick review on how to actually add black hatching, let's just start with the basement here. And then from my properties, what I plan to do is look at the visibility graphics and hit the edit button. Scrolling to the very bottom, here are the walls, and I want to click on the cut pattern, override it to a solid fill, and then hit OK. And there it is, you can see that. And the nice thing is it is also reflected on the sheet. You have to do this separately for all the different floor plans. So this pretty much concludes the video. I know that we covered a lot of odds and ends. And one of the things I also want you to do is make sure that you also put in your room labels, your room separators, label the major rooms, not including closets and bathrooms, you know, with the rough dimensions. But that's something that you can do on your own because it's already been covered. Please check out the assignment to make sure that you have all the criteria. We'll be going over this in class regardless, but have fun with the